Hey guys, Tammy here, and today I'm going to talk about 3 ways for you to get more parenting time. Now, sometimes we make mistakes, right? And sometimes those mistakes can result in us getting less parenting time. But sometimes the issue is that we're a victim of false allegations, and those false allegations lead to us getting parenting time. The interesting thing about that situation is that the solution to both of these problems is the same. Now, real quick, let me remind you, if you like these videos and you find them helpful, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and also hit like on this video. That way you're notified as new videos come out. So let's dive into these 3 ways that you can get more parenting time when you're up against this type of situation. The court really first and foremost wants us to take responsibility. Now, let me talk about responsibility a little bit because that's a big word and it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. We think of responsibility sometimes in terms of fault. Okay, whose fault is this? So if it's my fault and I, abused alcohol or drugs or, have some issue going on, a lot of times I know that's my fault. Sometimes I don't feel like it's my fault. Sometimes I feel like the other person did things to me that led me to cope in this way. So maybe that causes me to blame the other person. And then sometimes I'm falsely accused of these things when I didn't actually do them. And that would also make it the other person's fault. The interesting thing about fault and responsibility is they don't go together in life. And I think that's a really tough pill for us to swallow a lot of times. It's like we feel like whoever's fault it is should be the person that has to take responsibility for cleaning up the mess, right? So if this other person did something to me that's their fault, they should take responsibility. The problem with that is that the person whose fault it is only responsible for their own life. So if you made choices as a result of something someone else did to you, it's still your responsibility. And even if something happens that's not your fault at all, it's still your responsibility to fix it. So if we get super focused on the fault and whose fault it is, then we aren't taking responsibility to fix our own part in it, which is ironically the only way that we can then lead a happy life. Because you can't go through life looking at things being other people's fault and being in that sort of victim mentality and feel happy. That's not a place of empowerment. That's not a place of growth and progress and all the things that as a human being we need to be able to feel happy in and of ourselves. So when you're standing in front of the court on these issues, your credibility is everything. And so when you've gotten yourself in a situation where either you've made some of those bad decisions or you've reacted to the other person, or even again, if the other person has done these things, you have to remember that it's if the court has ruled against you and given you less parenting time or whatever as a result of that, then it's still the court's perception that those things happened. Right? Even if they didn't, even if you say that person's lying or whatever, you have to deal with the reality of what the court's perception actually is. And so when you're standing in front of the court and you're being defensive and you're saying, but this person's falsely accusing me and you need to change your decision and this isn't right because you don't understand all the facts and all the different things that go through our head that we want to say or sometimes do say. I do see clients say these types of things in court. And when you're standing in front of a judge and you're saying you're making the wrong decision, you have to understand that that's not going to garner you any favor with the court, even if you feel like this is a false problem. A lot of times I say to people, okay, if somebody told me that I would have to swear off alcohol for the rest of my life in order to see my kids, that's what I would do. I wouldn't get offended by it. It's not fair. I'm not saying it's fair. Life isn't fair. No part of life is fair, right? It's not fair that I went through a divorce. It's not fair that, Thomas recently passed away suddenly. It's not fair that, I've had to deal with, I lost my mom 10 years ago suddenly. None of it is fair, right? Nothing in life is ever fair. But when we start to get into that mode of this isn't fair and I shouldn't have to do this and I shouldn't have to deal with this, then again, the court feels like, well, you're not really addressing the problem that I'm telling you is a problem. So if you know this is a problem for the court and you want to see your kids bad enough and your kids are important enough to you, then your very number one step is to address whatever concerns the court has. And by address, I don't mean argue with. I mean take responsibility and build your credibility through doing what's necessary to correct this issue, that the court believes exists. The third thing you really have to do is to persevere. It is to not give up. And I know that this in particular can be really, really hard to do. And, when you're in a position where you're not getting to see your children or you're not getting to be with them, whether that is or whether that was or wasn't your fault, it can still make it very hard on the day-to-day to get up and get yourself going, to live life, to move forward. It sort of makes you feel like nothing has any point, right? Nothing has any meaning. And, I'm sorry, I'm going through this in my own way right now, right? With the loss of Thomas. Like there's some days where it just feels like nothing has any point. What's the point in getting out of bed? What's the point in doing anything I do? And you have moments like that. And you have to be able to persevere and push through those moments because your kids do need you. My kids need me. My family needs me. The community needs me, right? I've heard from people over and over and over as I've been going through this that like, please keep doing what you're doing. We really need the help. We really need the education. We need the videos. We need what you're saying. And so it can be real easy to get in your own head and to feel that hopelessness and feel like there's no point to it. But you have to always remember that what you're going through in life, in that moment, in that trial, in that suffering is not permanent, right? The one thing we know in life, and this can be a comfort in this type of situation, right, is this isn't permanent. How I feel right now in my grief is not permanent. I won't always feel this way. And the situation that you're in with your child custody won't always be the situation. And the way you're feeling about the situation won't be the way you always feel about it. When you're going through this with your kids, you have to remember that they're suffering too in their own way. And I've had parents before that have said, you know what? This is just too hard. I'm done. I'm out. I give up. The other parent wants to make it this difficult. The other parent wants to make it this hard and fight me this much and try to turn the kids against me and do all these things. I'm done. I'm out. All your children know, especially if they're really young, is abandonment. And honestly, even if they're teenagers, all they really know is you bailed on them. When it doesn't take very much effort or when it just takes a little bit for you to turn and walk away and give up, then your children feel like, well, I must not have been that important to that parent because at the first sign of trouble, they turned and ran. Your children want to know that you're going to be there and you're going to fight for them. And I find that's true, again, no matter what the age, from 4 to 14, 16, 17. I tell parents, if you have children that age that are saying they don't want to see you, I know that can be a big hurdle to try to deal with. I would be texting them every day. You don't need to guilt them or say, wow, you're not even seeing me, or I really wish you'd see me, or can I come pick you up? Or, you may want to ask about getting together, occasionally or whatever. But if you have a child that's not seeing you at all, I would at the very least send a text every day that says something along the lines of, I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. I miss you and I love you. I hope you have a good day. Something that's not asking something from them, something that they don't have to respond to, something that doesn't cause them to have to go against the other parent to fulfill or to comply with, just to have that little bit of encouragement from you and know that you are thinking about them and that you care and that you're in this and that you're not giving up on them. Even if it doesn't have an impact right now in this moment, and we know with teenagers, a lot of times especially, it's hard to tell. It doesn't feel like anything you do gets through to them sometimes. And so, I just want to encourage you that down the road later on, they're going to look back. They're going to remember that you were there. They are going to remember that you sent the text messages. They're going to remember that you kept fighting to see them and to have time with them, and that you didn't give it up no matter how hard it was. The other thing that you can do in the process of continuing to persevere is try to engage third-party experts as much as you can. Because when it's just you trying to present this information to the court and trying to show that you didn't do A or B, or that you've corrected A or B, or whatever the thing you're going through is, that coming out of your mouth when you're in that position of lowered credibility can take time for the court to really start to see what's happening and really start to get a grasp on, the actual situation. But when you have a third party expert like a therapist, whether it be your children's therapist, your therapist, any sort of external expert like that, physicians, psychologists, school counselors, teachers, I find that people that are outside that have a specific area of expertise that they can speak to, a lot of times the court will find that type of person credible. And so, from the very start, if you are having these issues, if you can get the kids into therapy, do what you can. If the other parent won't participate or won't allow you to get the kid in therapy, then maybe that's something you ask for an order from the court for, that the child be in therapy. The other thing I will tell you is, if you step back and give that other parent enough rope, if they're the high conflict parent, they will usually end up screwing up the case themselves. I have seen that happen over and over, even when they've been the person that had more parenting time or got the upper hand in the very beginning. Again, a lot of times it just takes the court time to kind of see the dynamics of what's going on. But I find that most judges are just unbelievably able to see through things and see the reality of what's going on if they're given enough time. And so, again, I would encourage you, don't give up. Even if your judicial officer you feel like isn't getting it in the first instance, most of the time, over time, they will, if you can begin to conduct yourself appropriately by doing these things that we talked about, by taking responsibility, by doing all that you can to boost your credibility, and by persevering and not giving up in this situation. And if you'll do those things over time, the judge starts to see that you're doing everything that you can within your power to try to remedy this situation. And so that other parent will usually get overconfident. That person that becomes overconfident like that will usually end up screwing it up because they just think they can do whatever they want. And they're not really educating themselves on what the court actually wants to see from them and how they're supposed to conduct themselves in these situations. I hope these 3 tips have been helpful for you. If you'd like to learn more about my coaching services, please go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. You can book a free 15-minute strategy session with me on there. And I'd love to talk to you and learn more about how I might be able to support you in this process. I'll see you guys next week.